this is not a technological problem. A lot of it is a human problem. You can't solve it all with technology. You can't solve it all by installing something. You have to be smart and protect yourself. The government's not going to do it. The cybersecurity companies can't 100% do it, but you can do it if you think the way that these attackers think. You get in their heads and you recognize the attack when it's coming.
This is Alex Kleanthis, and today we're talking with Eric O'Neill, a cybersecurity expert who worked as an FBI counterterrorism and counterintelligence operative and helped capture the most notorious spy in US history. In this episode, we talk about the next generation of cybersecurity threats and how you can protect yourself in an increasingly dangerous cyber world. I hope you enjoy this episode and make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes as soon as they're released. Hello, Eric. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Alex. It's a little late here over on the East Coast of the United States, but I'm eager to get into this.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, you are part of a story that happened back in 2001, and in regards to capturing the most notorious spy, I believe, in the history of the US. Is that right? Like I'd love to just start with that story, because I started just to consume all the information. I thought, all right, this is going to be a great place to start. So let's start there.
You know, as my kind of claim to fame, I'm happy to start there. Robert Hanssen was a senior FBI official. He was a supervisory special agent. At one point, he was a section chief. So he was very high up in the echelon of the FBI. He was also the top analyst for the Soviet Union back when there was a Soviet Union, and then continued to be an analyst looking at Russian spies and trying to hunt them down. He was also the top mole in the entire US intelligence community for over 22 years. So he was selling secrets from very early in his career. I think he was in 3 years as a special agent before he volunteered his services to the Soviet Union and continued for over 2 decades. And during that time, he gave some of the most damaging secrets that have ever been given to a foreign power. And he didn't just steal from the FBI. He was able to get on task forces with other agencies and steal from them as well, which masked where he was actually taking the secrets and made it harder for the Russians to even know who he was. So by hiding his identity, he was able to have one of the longest records of espionage in the US. He was certainly the most damaging spy in FBI's history, and he goes down as one of the most damaging spies in all of US history.
And so what was your role there? Because it's a pretty interesting story. Yeah, like if you could just kind of set the scene, right? Because I believe that you were around 25 years old at the time. Is that right? Yeah,
I was at 26, 27, right? So it was by the time the case was done, right after I turned 27. So I was young by the standards of someone who's going to go undercover to catch the biggest spy in FBI's history, but kind of the right person in the right place at the right time. And one of the few people who could do this. And let me explain why. Hanssen was a huge conundrum for the FBI. First of all, they'd gone after this mole that they only knew from a code name, which was Gray Suit. So they called this mole Gray Suit because they had no idea who they were, whether it was even a he or a she, and where they were in what agency. All they knew is we were losing intelligence secrets. The Russians were eating our lunch. We lost all of our spies in Russia between the years of 84 and 85. So we were completely blind to intelligence work. So there was a mole somewhere. So they gave this person a code name, called him Gray Suit. And there was this 2-decade mole hunt. At the very end of Hanssen's career in December 2000, when he was about to retire. So he was going to retire in April, 25-year pension, gold watch, get out of there, go take a job somewhere else. We learned from a former KGB source that was recruited, and that still happens, enough information that was circumstantial but pointed right at Hanssen, and hearts dropped in the FBI, because not only was he the most damaging spy in the history, he was also at one point asked, as the top Soviet analyst specialist, to catch Gray Suit. He was asked to catch himself. So, I mean, that's the perfect place if you're a spy, right? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And he was about to retire. So how do they keep him there? And they thought this case would go 1 or 2 years, because spies take that long sometimes to make major drops. And they wanted to catch him in the act of espionage, continuing to spy. So they gave him his dream job. They built an entire section in the FBI called the Information Assurance Section. And that was the FBI's first real department that handled cybersecurity. And they put Hanssen in charge of it. Hanssen, who had stolen secrets from the FBI for all this time and was one of the first spies to steal data stealing it from computer systems that were never built to defend from inside. And actually his earliest drops, some of his earliest drops were on floppy disks, those old like 5 1/4, floppy, flop, flop, flop. And then he moved to the like 3.5, which was a little stiffer. And then, we got him before he could move to thumb drives. So they put him in charge of cybersecurity, and they needed someone who knew how to hunt a spy and also knew how to turn a computer on. And in these legions of special agents who were specially trained to go undercover face to face against a spy, I never was trained to do that. I was a ghost. So I was clandestine. I used disguises and telephoto lenses and thermal imagers and all this kind of stuff to never actually be seen by my target. Well, none of those guys knew how to turn a computer on and sell the idea of we're building cybersecurity for the FBI. But I was one of those, good guy hackers playing with security, writing programs back then. And they said, this guy can do it, and threw me in there and sort of shook this secret office in room 9930 in FBI headquarters up and down and hoped I won. And I did.
And you did. And it's a movie, I think the movie came out in 2008 with Ryan Phillippe and I forget the other guy's name.
That's right. So Ryan Phillippe plays me. And we're close to the same age. He's like a year younger. So he had a lot of fun with it. He's like, I always play these old guys. I never get to play someone who's a contemporary, right? Chris Cooper plays Robert Hansen, and it was a masterful performance. And then Laura Linney plays my handler. There's Dennis Haysbert. He plays the supervisory special agent in charge of everything. And it's an all-star cast. It's a really great movie.
And so what an interesting place to kind of almost start a career in cybersecurity, right? And so,
exactly.
So you were one of the people who could turn on a computer. And I actually just remembered what a floppy disk was. Actually, that just kind of just brought me back, like back to my childhood.
I mean, my kids have no idea what that is. I mean, they don't even know what a disk drive is, or much less what do you do with a DVD at this point. So technology changes so fast.
So what did you learn from the FBI that led you into the cyber security space? Because obviously, I mean, that was at the very start, and it's just accelerated. I mean, I've had conversations even as late as yesterday about kind of software to stop kind of some phishing attempts or whatever, right? It's becoming such a big thing. Yeah. So how did you kind of transition, and so what have you seen over the 2 decades in terms of how much more it's become sophisticated and harder and so on?
Yeah, well, I got my start, in cybersecurity. The first time that I really dipped my toe in cybersecurity as a science was working with a spy in a overt job, where my covert job was really don't build cybersecurity for the FBI. It was find out the secrets that will lead us to catching Hansen. So I had to do both jobs, and Hansen really didn't do a lot of work. He was brilliant, but he wasn't much in doing work. It was more of like, this is what we need, and I would have to go do it. So I was actually doing a lot of the work to actually build cybersecurity. I left the FBI and I became an attorney. I was also going to law school at night while this was all happening, which is not what anyone should ever do. Don't try and catch a spy, work for the FBI, and go to law school every night. It's a miserable experience. And I was newly married, and had only been married 3 months when I was put on this case. So at the end of the case, I was completely burned out. I won. That was great. It was time for me to go and see what I could do next with this law degree. I left and I started practicing law. I did national security and government contracts law. I wasn't quite in cybersecurity, but cybersecurity and law weren't really connected yet. And after about 5 years of the big firm, I decided to start my own company. I started the Georgetown Group, which does some cybersecurity. We do forensics and we do some cyber advisory work, but is mostly working in the realm of competitive intelligence, giving our clients an advantage, helping them trust other parties they're going to work with or personnel that they're bringing in, all that kind of stuff. And as I was doing that, and the movie Breach came out, and I started becoming a public speaker, I realized that there's something missing in cybersecurity. And it was something I had, that so many of the solutions were focused on just technology to solve a technological problem. But the problem wasn't technology. The problem was people. And what was happening was these spies, right? And this is the theme of my book, Gray Day, really, is that there are no hackers, there are only spies, that spies had evolved. Those cloak and dagger days of old when I started at the FBI with dead drops and signal sites and clandestine meets and, shadowy corners had been thrown to the wayside by technology. It was much easier to sit in Moscow as a Russian intelligence operative and just launch a cyber attack against a person, spearfish them, steal their identity, and become them within a data environment and steal all their data. without ever leaving the comforts of home. You don't have diplomatic cover. You don't have to go do big, long recruitments. You just steal. So now espionage is pure cyber theft. And criminals have learned from spies and gotten really good at this. So I realized what I bring is a whole history of counterintelligence. That's what I learned. I'm a spy hunter. I know how to identify the bad guys, find them, follow the breadcrumbs, follow the trails, and catch them. And that's something cybersecurity needed. And now cybersecurity is all counterintelligence. It's all threat hunting. That's the best in breed cybersecurity, is looking for the threat actively, not passively layering defenses to try to stop it from coming in.
So you talk about threat hunting versus hacking and then spies, right? So let's just talk quickly about spies versus hackers, right? Because I feel like, like if someone thinks I'm going to get hacked, they're thinking of somebody at home, some third world country, they found some software online, installed some software on someone's computer.
Right.
It seems more kind of lucky instead of more intent-based, right? So it seems yeah,
we need to elevate the way we think. It's right now.
Can you just explain that, please? Because I think
my soapbox, Alex, is all about elevating people's thinking to understand the threat. If we don't even understand the threat, then how are we going to defeat it? Because you have to know your adversary, because otherwise you have no idea how to stop them. So I play this game when I'm doing a keynote. I'll do a keynote for 3,000 people and I'll play this game. And it's always the same fun game. So I'll play it with your audience here. If I'm going to say a word and put in your head the image you get from that word, and bear in mind, like Hollywood and TVs, you sort of reinforces this. Hacker, right? Okay, see if I'm right. Bear with me here, Alex. Am I right? Did you think about some kid in a basement, black hoodie on like this, tapping away at a keyboard, grandma yells from upstairs, he pounds an energy drink, he eats some bad carbs, and he clicks one key. And what does he say every single time? I'm in. Into what? I mean, that's like magic, right? It doesn't happen like that. What actually is happening are these sophisticated, what I call cybercrime syndicates, are using the dark web as cover. So they're completely anonymous. They can get paid through cryptocurrency channels that are difficult even for law enforcement to trace. And they're built like businesses. They have entire business verticals. They have payroll. They're going to pay their bad guys. They have ways to bring in money. So they have a finance team. They have a help desk. If they lock you with ransomware and you pay, they actually have individuals who are part of a help desk, which will help you decrypt their malicious code. And they even have call centers, dark web call centers, where there are people who are just trained on scripts to impersonate people or to trick people or to fool people. And they just make phone calls. They can buy the same phone list that telemarketers buy, or they can just buy whole identities for pennies off the dark web and learn all about you and then call us your brother. And this is getting worse and worse. So by elevating our thinking, we're not thinking of some kid in the basement where it's sort of like a drive-by, oh, I was unfortunate. They're actually targeting us, and they don't care who you are, and they don't care what you do or how much money you make or how prominent your business is or you are. They only care if you're vulnerable. So if you're vulnerable, you are going to get attacked.
I did think about the guy in the hoodie, by the way. That's exactly the first thing.
Everybody
That's literally the first thing I thought. Actually, there's no one of those. It's
the biggest meme for hackers. But that's why I don't like the term. Like when I think of a hacker, when someone says hacker, I think of all my friends.
Yeah, sure.
Who were,
ethical
playing
hackers
with security, finding ways to break it, to make it stronger. And now they all work for cybersecurity companies. For me, those are the hackers. They're the good guys. They wear the white hats. The bad guys for me are cyber criminals, cyber spies, cyber terrorists, cyber activists, right? Who are breaking, destroying, stealing. And that's who we're up against.
I have so many questions. I'm going to keep it structured here. You talk about kind of endpoint security, right? Because there's always security and there's always a gap in security in some point, right? And I think I want to try and stay away. Well, I don't know if we should even talk about it, but like there are some companies who are so lax with their security. Like they'll have like kind of essentially everything is in, so everything is the same password. I think somebody basically emailed us, a client of ours. I think they emailed us basically all their passwords just by email, right? And they all have the same passwords and so on. So I don't know if we need to talk about that super simple stuff, but
Well,
I think possibly we
sometimes the
should.
simple
But
stuff-
then it
look,
goes advanced from there, right? So maybe we start from the simple, right? Because I think everyone just has like, if I see like another password that is, say, for example, 4 zeros or something like that, it's going to kill me, right? Right?
Yes.
But I think start from the basics, and then like I think just to explain to people kind of how the simple things are risks and kind of how they can start to protect themselves. Because I think that everyone, like, it seems to fit into the too hard basket. Oh, that's for my nephew, that's for my kid, that's for my cousin. It's like, you know, that's outside of my pay grade or whatever else it is, right? So could you talk about like the layers of security, please? Yeah.
So look, the most basic levels in security are the things that everybody misses. And they're the things that will save you. Passwords are useless. And here's why. People have the same password and they use the same password across multiple accounts. So for example, you might think of this beautifully long password, which is the first line from the book that you loved as a child, backwards with an exclamation point right in the middle. And no one's ever going to guess that password, but you use it for your work. You use it for your Gmail account. You use it for your email account. You use it for, you know, the login to the ice cream store. You use it for the login to this and that. And somebody along the way has lost your username and password in a breach. And now it's on the dark web and it's just been purchased. And some attacker grabs a bunch of these and just tries it in places. So now they've got your password into all these places. So relying on a password alone means you've already lost this cyber war. It's over. What has to happen, what everyone has to do, the most basic thing you can do to protect yourself against the majority of attacks, make it hard for attackers to compromise you, is turn on two-factor authentication. That's the easiest place to start. I have it on everywhere. If I open an account with somebody and they don't have it, I close the account. I go somewhere else because I just don't trust my passwords. Passwords can be guessed, and computers are getting so sophisticated and fast that now they can crack passwords pretty quickly. Unless you're using special encrypted technology, which we're not all using, that password can get cracked. They can also go into social media and learn a lot about you, and the ones that are very savvy are going to guess your password pretty fast. So use two-factor authentication everywhere. And for those who don't really recognize what that means, that's where, you know, you enter your password and then it sends you a text to your phone, or you enter your password and then it says, open your authenticator app on your phone, which is kind of the best. And it gives you that one-time code that you plug in. That code is golden. That code is what saves you, because bad guys don't have it. They can try and guess your password, but without that, they can't get in. That's why you often see when you have your two-factor turned on for big accounts like Microsoft Hotmail or Gmail, you occasionally get, here's your code. Here's your code. That means someone has your password. They're trying to get into your account, but they don't have your code. So you don't want to give them your code, right? And that means that everything's working. You can go change your password. They're going to get your new password eventually, but that means things are working. So those are two of the biggest things. The number 1 and 2 successful cyber attacks, like 99% of them come because of a flaw or a vulnerability that you didn't patch. And the rest of them come because of spear phishing. So that vulnerability means I didn't patch my stuff. I don't feel like updating. Well, normally when, your phone or your computer, your operating system sends you out like you should update, or, sometimes they say critical update. Sometimes they're a little more trite. They say, we're just quashing a few bugs. Well, those bugs could be a serious vulnerability that attackers can use. So you want to update and patch your stuff as soon as you can. Organizations are terrible at this. Attackers know that the amount of time between, say, a big vendor saying we have a patch and it's a critical update to an organization patching is an average of 3 months. That means when the attacker sees that, a big company has issued a patch, they go and find all the companies that use that company as a vendor or as an application, and they start attacking them to try to exploit the vulnerability, knowing that it takes a long time to patch, sometimes within 24 hours. The other thing is spear phishing. The only way to really stop spear phishing is turn on two-factor authentication. 25% of successful attacks are because of spear phishing. That's that email that completely fools you. It's an impersonation attack. And you, for whatever reason, trust that it's true. And you open a link or you click on an attachment and it has malicious code that infects your computer. And by the way, no matter how much training you do, 25% of people will open that email and click that link. So it's a 25-25 rule.
Okay, I love this so far, because this is like this is something that everybody can actually do, which is great. So first of all, don't just use passwords, turn on kind of two-factor authentication. The second thing is update all your software. Yeah. So
Right.
I would say like I'm no hacker, but I'm kind of more kind of technical than most people I know. So they come to me, I fix their computers, I update their stuff. If they get stuck, they come to me. The amount of people that just keep skip on that update just hurts me. I look at the computer, I'm like, can you just please hit yes next time? Is there something in people's heads where they just don't hit yes? Right?
Yeah,
like, is there something which you can say to them to say,
what it is there's this fear. They're like, well, if I update, then, I'm an early adopter of the patch and things might go wrong. And, what happened with CrowdStrike kind of reinforced this fallacy. But for the most part, updating is a good thing. I just turn on auto update. I have all my stuff turned to auto update, so I don't have to worry about it. I plug it in at night, it like happens. And the next morning I say, we've updated to the latest version. I'm like, this is great. Right. That is safer than not updating at all. There will occasionally be the time where there's a problem with an update and it glitches and you've got to roll it back. And that's a pain in the butt. But it's much better to have your systems updated to the most secure version and not fall prey to a drive-by attack or someone who's targeting you because they assume you have an updated attack than to not have it updated at all. So
is there any way that people can get past the two-factor authentication? It seems pretty secure, but I'm not the expert. I'm asking you now. Yes, they can. So how would they get past it? Yeah.
If I wanted to attack you, right, and leverage your two-factor authentication, I would spoof you. So what I would do is I would send you a spear phishing email that looked like it came from your bank and looked very legitimate and said, you want to put someone in a crisis. Your account's been compromised. We noticed this charge for $460. If you dispute the charge, click here and we'll send you to the fraud department so that you don't have to pay, basically. It's a lot more clever than that, but it's worded well and AI is helping criminals. The grammar's perfect. The spelling's perfect. They can translate it into any language. The logos look crisp and nice. So you get this email and you think, oh no, I'm going to be in trouble. So you click through, but you've got two-factor authentication. You enter your password and your username and you enter your password, and then the fake website they've created opens up the next window. So now they've grabbed your username and password and their mock website. It's not really your bank. And then it says, enter your two-factor authentication. And so you enter it thinking that you're on your bank's website, but you're not. You're on a website the attacker controls. On another screen, they're now in your bank, logging in with your username, password, and then once you give them your two-factor number, they plug it right in. And they're in your bank account now. So yes, they can. You have to also be very careful not to click on the links, not to open those attachments. If you receive something like that from your bank or a delivery service or your favorite food service or anything, it's great. A link's convenient, but just close it and then go directly to that company in the browser, log into your account that way. So you're in a secure browser.
Wow. So the summary is be careful on the emails that you open. I mean, I always like to see the from address, right? Because sometimes they hide it, but if you but if you mouse over the link or if you have a look inside of the actual email and have a look at the from and expand that out, it actually says something that is not actually the bank, but it looks very, very similar to the bank. So they're very smart at that.
They will register domains that look very similar to the bank's domain. Now, and they get very clever. There was an attack using Amazon. And so people would go to what they thought was Amazon.com, right? But the middle A was actually a Cyrillic A. It just looks like an English A. And so if you actually if you were to grab it out of the browser, copy it and paste it in a Word document, it would be underlined red because that Cyrillic A is actually like an I think, in a US keyboard. But you don't know when you're looking at it, you think you're at Amazon. Now it would have to be a pretty good site, but in my forthcoming book, right, which is coming out next year, The Invisible Threat, I talk about the need to be an email archaeologist, right? Not, the kind that's dusting those bones carefully, like looking through that email, because email is such a dangerous thing. Email is the prime vector of attack for cyber criminals, but cyber spies use it too. So we have to be careful when we're in email. It's not really a safe environment. It's one where we have to take care. maybe you're the kind of archaeologist that, wears a fedora and carries a whip. You gotta be really on top of things and in charge of your own data.
Sometimes there's emails that have attachments that are some PDFs, right? Or sometimes there's like a link, right? And I did remember seeing some interview, maybe it was with Edward Snowden on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said that sometimes essentially just hitting on a link is enough that they can install something on your computer that can actually start to track the keystrokes or to send information back and so on. How much of a risk is that these days?
No, it still happens. So what happens is you open a link and then it opens your web browser, and then the attacker is using malware to scan your web browser and see if there's a vulnerability. And they use that as a way to get into your system. So opening those links can be troublesome, but more likely is what happens is you've just opened a link to a spoofed website, a fake website that the attacker controls.
That's
and
more
you
likely.
Think you're in somewhere trusted, right? It's a little bit more sophisticated, where there are linkless attacks. But that's at a level of sophistication where most cyber criminals aren't going to be doing that, and it's not as much of a threat as the very basic things that work so well. Why do they have to go to that next level? They really have to want to come after you to use some of those.
And we're going to come back to that in a second, because that is a question I have. But so Apple versus Microsoft, like, is there a kind of more secure platform, or is it just that, there's one that seems to just have like a lot more kind of popularity for hackers than others?
Well, Microsoft right now Windows has what, 73% of the market share globally. Apple, which is much more secure, has 13%. I use a Mac. I just like the operating system better. The operating system is more secure. Their endpoint security that's built in is better. They don't give access the same way that Microsoft does to the kernel, which is, sort of the central processing part of the computer that happens at boot up, which is what caused the CrowdStrike problem. So yes, there are operating systems that are more secure, but Microsoft is also ubiquitous. When you're in business, you're pretty much in a Windows box. Even if you're on a Mac, you're using Word, you're not using Pages. The world uses Word and PowerPoint and Excel. So you can't really get away from it. Microsoft could do better. Every once in a while, and in a post or an op-ed, I kind of come after them because they really could do better, and they should do better because they've got so much of the market. The best way to be secure is to take care of yourself. You can't just trust an operating system. I run a cybersecurity suite on my Mac, right?
Which one do you use?
You have to do it on Windows. I use it's called AVG antivirus, but it has a cybersecurity suite. It has ransomware detector. It has a phishing detector, and it catches. The nice thing is that it catches the obvious malware spear phishing links in my mailbox before I even see them, which is the way you want it. You want it to be gone before you even have a chance to be caught. But there are many like that. There are really good ones out there. And this is for single users. If you want to go the Norton route, you get LifeLock. They're really good. And there are plenty out there for the consumer. Then at the enterprise level, you want to go to something that's more robust. And that's all architecture based. Like, how global are you? How many computer systems are you defending? There, it's less about who you use, right? Look, I still think CrowdStrike's a great product, even though they had that horrible problem. Sometimes when companies have terrible problems like that, they come back a little better, but they've got so many competitors that are also at that high end. What's important if you're an enterprise, if you're a business, is you want to have what's called endpoint security. Even my little cybersecurity suite for my personal computer is leveraging endpoint security. And endpoint security is a sensor that runs on your system, and it's looking at everything that's trying to execute. Right? Your endpoint, my laptop's an endpoint, your laptop's an endpoint, our phones are endpoints. They're just the devices that's closest to the human that's going to access data through that endpoint, the device. And at the other end is your data that's sitting on a server somewhere, like in the cloud or on a network or on a hard drive. So you want to protect the endpoint. And so that's really for business, that's basic. And that's part of this, we're getting really into it, but that's part of this science in cybersecurity called zero trust. We're not going to trust anything unless we say it's good, right? That's what your technology needs to do for you. So when someone breaches you and they try to execute something on your machine, that endpoint says, nah, and it stops it. It's like a bouncer at a club, with a list. And if you're not on the list, you don't get in. right? I don't care how beautiful you are or how well dressed you are, how much money it looks like you have. You're not getting in this club because you're not on the list. And I'm so much bigger than you. It's not going to happen. And then you can take it to next levels. It's endpoint plus this and that. And, you know, you look at network security and all the things you need to do.
So is two-factor authentication enough, or should people also have the endpoint security, say, for example, like the AVG?
Yes. So you do want to install something on your computer. You don't necessarily have to install the cybersecurity suite on, say, your phone, because the operating system just works differently.
I was going to ask you about phones next, actually.
However,
yes,
I endorse the use of a VPN, like ExpressVPN or NordVPN. There are a lot out there. The only thing you'd want to do is when you choose a VPN, and that masks your IP address. So when you're on your phone and you're in the airport, you want to turn your VPN on. When you're in a hotel room, because hotel Wi-Fi is particularly able to be attacked, and now they can get everybody who connects in the hotel, you want to turn your VPN on because it'll mask your identity. They won't know who you are or where you are. You're like, they see you and they think, hey, this guy's sitting in Berlin when you're, over here in Washington, DC. So the VPN is pretty critical when you're traveling. I use a VPN on my home computer too. You purchase the yearly subscription. They give you like 5 devices you can put it on, and you just stack it on everything that you can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I'm in the crypto space as well. And so that's the place where you need to be secured up to the hilt. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so VPNs, I was always told install a VPN. So I have like VPNs everywhere. I've got like on my phone, on my computer, everywhere. But can you explain how a VPN actually protects people from kind of, just from all this stuff? Because I install it and I should install it, but how does it stop, bad actors?
One, it hides your traffic. So the most important reason to have a VPN is your ISP, your internet service provider, doesn't know what you're surfing, because your ISP can log the website you visit. And you don't want them to know that. I mean, that's your private data. You don't want them to know what you're looking at. I mean, maybe, you've just found out you have cancer and you're doing a lot of research on it. You don't want your ISP to know that, because, they can get breached too, or law enforcement can ask for that. So a VPN can help you mask that. It also masks your identity. So your IP address is hard to pin down. That makes it a little harder for an attacker to breach your device. And, phones are a little harder, but even your computer. So if you're using a VPN, you're masking who you are on that Wi-Fi network. So it's harder for them to pin down your IP address and attack you through Wi-Fi. So it's a good reason to have all that. But look, the biggest reason is for privacy. It makes your browsing more private, the things that you're doing online more private, and we all could use a lot more of that.
Yeah, I noticed that there are some sites that I try to visit. I think even sometimes Amazon or Instagram, where they say, sorry, I can tell that you're from a VPN, this untrusted traffic. I'm like, you guys just want to track everything.
Yeah, well, they do want to track everything, and they don't want you logging on a VPN. Like Netflix is notorious. They're very good at spotting whether you're on a VPN. And because, I travel overseas and I log into like a Netflix account or an Amazon account. And, sometimes it's like, you can't see this stuff here. And so, then you go on the VPN and you start switching countries until it kind of tricks it. I can watch my stuff again,
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a lot of work to make sure that people aren't doing it so that they can't hide. Look, I use VPN. My wife is German, and my kids all speak German. And there's all these German TV apps that it's the same as sitting down and watching TV in Germany. And I found a way to install a VPN on my router that makes the router think we're in Germany. So she can load all those apps and watch them, and everybody's super happy. It's public TV channels. Yeah. It should be, everyone should be able to see it, but the VPN allows it to happen.
And I think also, because this is a story that one of our developers actually kind of shared internally, was like, sometimes at airports, the hackers will set up a fake Wi-Fi, and it would sound like it's like the airport. And so then you log in for free, and then they just extract everything from you.
Yeah, right? You want to be very careful of evil Wi-Fi. So evil Wi-Fi is here's a great story. There was a coffee shop, a Starbucks, that was having a problem. Like, people were complaining that they kept getting breached every time they went in the coffee shop. And when some forensics was actually done to see what was going on, it turned out that the guy who lived in the apartment right next to the Starbucks had grabbed a powerful Wi-Fi router and slapped it against the adjoining wall and was transmitting his own Wi-Fi with the SSID, Starbucks coffee place or something like that. And people thought it was free Wi-Fi. So they're logging in, and now he can see their IP address, he can see their computer, and he can use a Wi-Fi attack to breach them. And he can see their traffic. So when people go into Starbucks or any coffee shop, and they'll sit all day using free Wi-Fi and they'll work. They got business confidential information that they're emailing. They have logins to their bank accounts, when they're paying for things. And this guy was grabbing all that and stealing identities and using their credit cards and all sorts of nefarious things. So you do have to be careful about that evil Wi-Fi. When I'm traveling, and I have my iPad or my computer, what I'll normally do is just tether to my phone and use my data. Right. It's just a lot safer. If you go in if you go to the airport and you go into like a club, you can usually trust that Wi-Fi to the extent that, you're using your cybersecurity suite and your VPN, right? And you log in, but you're not you will sometimes see people, they have their own little Wi-Fi devices and it's all over the place. I mean, we live under so much Wi-Fi, who knows what it's doing to our brains, but you can go in a club or you can go in a hotel and make sure you're on the right one. And you can actually ask when you check in, what is the name of your Wi-Fi SSID? Can you write it down for me? So you make sure you're logging into the right one.
Yeah, I'm so paranoid now that I just kind of hotspot off my phone. Like I just tether off my phone because I just don't know enough to know if I'm doing everything correct. So I figure, well, if I'm on my phone, that's obviously going to be the safest connection, right? So I'll pay a bit more for that, I'll pay extra.
I have a program. So my cybersecurity suite, I'm using AVG on my Mac, that will actually scan the network for you and tell you whether, hey, this looks, it'll tell you this is a public network. It's like, yeah, it's a hotel, dude. And then it's like, well, there are this many people connected to it. And you can kind of see like, this is the one that I want. This is the one where there's like one bad guy, right? So. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to install the software that you use and I use Mac as well. So that's good. Just quickly on phones, like how much of a risk are phones? Because I see sometimes like inside of the Google suite, essentially just want you to protect your phone as well as your computer and stuff like that, just for all the staff members and so on. But I mean, how much of a risk are phones? And I think you mentioned before, it's not the same as a computer. So like it operates a little bit differently.
Yeah, the operating system is much more closed, at least with the Apple device. So I use an iPhone. I'm just in the Apple ecosystem. It's easier to switch around. The problem with Android is that it's a bit more open in the architecture. So Android phones get attacked and breached far more often. Both companies, though, have problems in the App Store. Just because you're downloading something from Google Play or you're downloading something from the Apple App Store doesn't mean that it's 100% safe. Most of it is. If you're downloading things that right, like Adobe, right, or your Gmail, right. But when you download some of these silly little apps that are this game that they're just trying to get you to play, but some of it can actually have malicious code. It does sneak through the quality control. More, I think, on the Play Store than the Apple Store, but it does get through both. Like using an Android is a little bit like using a jailbroken iPhone. You can do a lot more with it, but it also opens it up a little bit more. People bang their heads because you really can't do anything with the iPhone that you're not allowed to do by Apple, but that makes it a little bit more secure. So you got to make your judgment call on which you want to go with. And some of it's preference. Like I've been using an Android forever, so that's what I like. Well, me personally, I've been using an iPhone forever so that's what I stick with since I had like my Razr flip phone.
I remember those too. And can you protect yourself on your phone? Like, okay, so install VPN, but is there like any antivirus, any anti-protect? Like any
absolutely.
Kind of protection?
Yeah, all of the major cybersecurity and antivirus companies will give you like 5 installs, and you can use one of those for your phone, and it'll run in the background. And it's a good idea. If you're not super careful like me, going through email is the main way that they'll get you. But attackers will hit you up with text too, and they don't always have to install malware. I mean, that's one of the misconceptions, is that attackers are always trying to find a way to install malware so we can solve this with cybersecurity. But the number one cyber attack right now is financial schemes using imposter or confidence scheme attacks, like old scamming type stuff where there isn't even a line of code that's used. So here's a great example. There's a case where an individual you get them all the time, right? Hello, this is Alice. Is Anne there? They're just dump. They just grab phone lists, and these are call centers, and they're just typing it in and sending texts, right? It's the laziest way to do it. But you reply because you're a polite person. The thing to do is just delete it. But you reply, no, you've got Eric. Alice isn't here. You must have the wrong number. And then it becomes a whole thing. Every once in a while, I drag them around for a while just to see how long I can get them to go before they actually Google me, or do a reverse lookup and figure out who they're talking to. But then the next thing is, oh, well, who is this? It's, it's so nice to meet you. And they're looking for people who are lonely or elderly or, just need a friend, and they become that friend. They will spend weeks, even months sometimes, creating this friendship, having these long conversations. It can move from text to phone. They'll send, they'll never do like a video chat because it's like some 18-year-old kid, but they will send you pictures, and they'll use AI to use different voices and all that kind of thing. And then finally, when you've established this rapport and trust, they start small, and it normally goes like this. Look, I've been an investor for some time in cryptocurrency, and I've made a fortune, and would you like to try? Here's my website. They send you a website. It looks like an investment website. This is my company. Here are our metrics, and they show like this astronomical gain, like the stock market's getting 6%. We're doing 22%, right? And then they say, just invest $1,000. $100, whatever. I'll show you how much you can gain, and, just as a friend. And I'll do that. Normally it's $100,000 buy-in, but, we're pals. So give me $1,000. I'll just want to show you how well this works. So you do, right? You give him $1,000. And then when he gives you your secure login to the website, to the investment website, every day you look at it, that $1,000 is growing. And after a month, you're like, holy crap, I have $1,200. If I invested all my money this way, I'd be a millionaire. And so you do, bit by bit, you do. And they keep pulling it, and they keep getting it, and they keep investing, and they keep showing you growth and all this fortune. And finally, you're like, I want to go take my kids on a cruise. I need to pull some money out. They're gone. And that's called pig butchering.
Wow. Pig butchering. Is that right?
Pig butchering. What they, it's the old ancient Chinese art. And what they would do is they fatten the pig and fatten the pig and fatten the pig. And when the pig was so big, it was going to burst. They kill it, butcher it, and they've got all that meat. So they tell you, you don't need to invest in an IRA, like pull out your pension fund, like put it all in here. You're going to make a fortune, and you'll retire 10 years earlier than you plan to. Or you can enjoy your retirement for 20 years longer than you thought you would. And people fall for it. It's one of the biggest financial crimes on earth.
Isn't that fascinating? And that one, you can't stop it because it's you sending them money, right? Like that's just
you sending the money.
It's you sending the money past it. Yeah. It's past all your two-factor authentications. It's past all that.
It's just you direct.
Endpoint security.
And they will even, so what they'll do, the most clever attackers that leverage pig butchering is they not only set up the mock website. This used to be harder. Now AI will throw it together for you right away, and they'll manipulate all the statistics. Every time you log in, they make it, every day they bump it up a little. So when you log in, it looks better and better. But what they'll also do is they'll go in the dark web and buy an identity. You buy anybody's identity on the dark web. You just find an identity and you make sure it's a good one. You pay more money for those. That means that someone hasn't reported their identity stolen. Now you have their driver's license, and you go open a legitimate bank account. And that bank account is what's called a drop account. So you think you're transferring the money to like a Citibank or a Chase or where this person's just opened a bank account with a stolen identity, which happens all the time. So you're not even thinking like, I'm not sending Western Union, or I'm not Venmoing the money, or I'm not sending like a wire, which you can never get back from any of those, by the way. So be careful before you ever send anything through those three. And, but no, I'm sending it to a bank. I could always call the bank and say, I need this money back. But what's happening is it's sitting in the bank account, right? So you can actually go check, and then as soon as it's over, as soon as they think that you're onto them, they quickly move it out into cryptocurrency, and that's gone.
I guess this then leads to the conversation again of spies versus hackers, right? If someone is targeting you, can you actually stop them from actually hacking you? If someone is coming after you? Because I saw it was something inside your book about how kind of WikiLeaks and CIA materials actually were stolen, I think a few years ago. All the code was online. It's all accessible. And they use that. And I think they hacked into some banks and hospitals and kind of airports and different things.
Right. Yeah. They actually stole Vault 9. They actually stole it from the CIA. They've stolen cyber attack tools from the CIA. They've stolen cyber attack tools from the NSA. It's been released by disgruntled employees, and those can be used to launch further attacks. Now AI is just building it. So they don't need that, right? You can get the AI to write the malware for you, right? And launch attacks. But so what can you do? I get attacked all the time. Some of them are really clever. One almost got me. It was so clever. It was a whole scheme of attackers. There was like there were maybe like 3 or 4 of them, each playing different roles that, had set up a fake keynote that I was going to deliver in Cape Town in South Africa. And I really wanted to go, and I was really excited. And that builds what's called confirmation bias. And that's what they want. And I mean, we even negotiated the keynote, negotiated the fee, like drafted a contract. They signed the contract. They sent me the reservation for my hotel. And then they asked me to buy my plane ticket. And they said, buy it first class. So, okay. And are you sure? It's $10,000 to fly first class. That's like that's like a big add-on to my fee, which is already like they were giving me my full fee. So I was real excited. Yeah. And I bought the ticket. And now they really got you, because once you've spent $10,000 out of your own pocket, you truly want to believe it's true, right? And that confirmation bias, all psychology, it makes you start talking yourself into it. Now, I quickly thought there's something wrong here, because then they were asking me to pay a repatriation fee and escrow money before I went and all that. And so, I'm an attorney. I called the embassy, in DC. And I was like, have you ever heard of any of this? And they said, we don't have an escrow or we don't have a repatriation fee that you have to escrow, sir. I've never heard of that. And I was like, oh, it's a scam. So I quickly called the airline. It was United, which I'm completely loyal to forever. And I told them the story, and they were like, I am so sorry, sir. That's such a great story. We're just going to refund your ticket.
Wow.
No harm, no foul.
I was hoping that happened.
Yeah. And once, I got the ticket, but now I was out no money, and I just strung them along for a while. I strung them along until I collected all the evidence I needed to get them all arrested. And so, yes, they probably shouldn't have. I insisted they call me. He called me on his personal phone number. You don't want to do that. Like, don't call me on your mobile phone. I'll find out who you are in like 10 seconds.
And I love the fact that it's almost like a vendetta now, because it's like, hey, cool, so you got me to spend a lot of money on a first class ticket, and I wasted my time, which is the worst one, and you almost got me.
A huge amount of time. And then I found out that I did some research, and I found out that they had scammed countless speakers who were out of that 10 grand. Some of them even flew over there and showed up at the venue, wearing their suit and tie and all ready to go. And they were like, what? And they're like, who the hell are you? It's like, so now I've just spent $10,000 of my own money, plus like $5,000 to $7,000 to literally ask as much as they can for this repatriation fee that I'll never get back. I'm in Cape Town. I don't actually have a hotel.
You'd feel like such a sucker in that moment. You'd be like, damn, I felt so bad
for those people. Yeah. But that made it a vendetta, right? Exactly. Like you said, like I was going to take them down, and I just strung them along and kept gathering information and evidence and information until I had enough in the ring to bring it to the police in South Africa.
Okay. So with AI and now with deep fakes, and, in terms of visuals and audios, I mean, I even heard a story just recently where they pretend to be somebody's son or daughter, and they call and go, hey, mom, I just need something, could you transfer me or something, right? From a corporate level, I could see some similar things happening. If someone was coming after you, can you actually stop them? Or are there just a bunch of things which you can it's almost like obstacles along the way? It just makes it harder. But they can always get you if they want.
You can make it harder, and you can be smarter, and you can catch the scam. The book I'm writing right now, well, I've written, my first draft is with HarperCollins. So now they're editing, and I'll be editing soon, but that's coming out early next year in 2025. It's all about that. So the first part of the book is using counterintelligence techniques that I learned in the FBI to teach you to think like a spy, right? Now you're going to understand all the different ways that cyber criminals are coming after us. This one's all about cybercrime. Gray Day was about cyber espionage. This book's about cybercrime, like what you and I have to worry about. Like if a spy is coming after us, I mean, we're in trouble. But the criminal, we can spot it. We can totally spot it, right? And this teaches you how to spot it by thinking like them. And every one of my beta readers has caught an attack. And that's like the best thing I could totally hear, because that's what I'm doing this for. The second part of the book is, okay, now you know how to spot the attacks. Here's how you stop them. Act like a spy hunter. So think like a spy, act like a spy hunter. But it's that way of understanding the attacks, knowing what pig butchering is, knowing what happens when you answer that text. You know, there's a story I tell in the book about a mother in Arizona who got a call from her daughter while her daughter was supposed to be on the way with the ski trip with her husband. And the daughter was screaming that they're going to kill me, Mom. And then the next voice was this angry, rough voice that said, "Oh, I've kidnapped your daughter, and if you don't pay, I'll kill her." And the mom was trying to get funds and getting ready to pay. And at the same time, she kept her cool. She had another friend called 911. She had her younger daughter who was with her start texting the daughter, texting the father. They were away on a ski trip. So finally, they got the text after like hours of this, where they're negotiating like how she's going to get the cash to the guy and where he's going to drop off, where they're going to meet in his van. And she's like, "I don't want to come near your van." And, the police were getting involved. And finally the daughter texts back like, "I'm fine, Mom." It was a deep fake. They'd gone on social media, cloned the daughter's voice and used it. And it happens all the time now, all the time.
I spoke to a friend of mine and he was like, switch off your voicemail, because that's a super easy way that they can just get your voice. But I was like, but I'm on YouTube and I'm
and I are doomed, right? It takes $5.05 to clone your voice. That's it. That's all it costs to do a very good avatar that's going to say whatever I want it to say using an AI deepfake.
So thinking like a spy, right? I think it was the guy from Intel, Andy Grove, who said only the paranoid survive. Is that kind of the thinking that's going to happen in the next 10 years?
Well, that's a good point. Don't be paranoid. In counterintelligence and spy hunting, in the FBI, but in the military and, even people who do any kind of disaster relief, paranoia paralyzes you. If you're paranoid, like everything's an attack. You can't function. Like you could never go online if you were paranoid. But be suspicious. Suspicion's good. Like, you remember the old trust but verify? Turn that on its head. Don't trust anything. Verify everything, right? Don't trust. Your initial thought when you open an email shouldn't be, "Oh, it's from my sister." No, don't trust that. Verify it's from your sister, right? If anything looks weird or off, give them a call. "Did you send me this email with all these attachments? Like, does your sister normally do that?" Right? Start thinking like someone who's looking out for themselves, that wants to protect themselves. That thing about the deep fake, the call, like, "Mom, I've been kidnapped," have a safe word. That's what we did in counterterrorism. If you were ever captured and, they want to sign a life, when well, let me talk to them. And then I give the safe word, like, "It's really me," right? My family uses a color. I'm not telling you which one, but it can be anything, a weird word, something that your whole family's going to know. And now when you get that call, you say, "Okay, oh my God, this is terrible. What's the safe word?" Bad guy's not going to know that. Right? If they know it, you're screwed, but they're not going to know that. You can do that with your colleagues, with your business associates, with your friends. Make it into a game.
So I've seen some beer phishing attacks, I guess they are, just where an employee of our company will get an email from the CEO of our company, right? And it will say, "Hey, look, I need you to urgently transfer me some $1,000 or something. I'll transfer you right?" And I think some of them, like in the early stages, almost got caught with it. I mean, now they're just accustomed to it because it's like, that's not us, right? But in the beginning, that was close.
It is still a a $49 billion crime a year.
Is it? 49 billion?
Oh, it's massive. It's incredibly huge. It's called business email compromise. And it's where the attacker either launches a spear phishing attack and compromises the CEO or the CFO or someone in the executive team's email, and then figures out, usually, using resources like LinkedIn and social media, who are all the people in finance, and then has that executive send emails to everybody in finance saying things like, "This is a super confidential deal. It's going to fall through if this wire doesn't go out soon. Here's the SWIFT code and all the information to send the wire. I need you to send me this in the next 10 minutes. You need to send this wire in the next 10 minutes, $1 million to this vendor. Email me as soon as you're done," right? Now, we've trained that away. That still, by the way, works. with all of the resources and all of the training and all the people like me who stand up on stage all the time, like this is one of the biggest financial fraud attacks that happen. And, it's not even really using a line of code and it's working. It still is one of the most prevalent financial cyber attacks. And it's still called a cyber attack because, it's primarily coming through email, business email compromise. But it gets worse. Now what attackers are doing is they're using deepfakes to make this better. So there's a case in Hong Kong. There's a multinational corporation. It's headquartered in the UK. They've got a branch in Hong Kong because everybody has a branch in Hong Kong. If you're in finances, right? If you there's all the big banks are there and whatever. There's in our hero, our protagonist, since I call him a hero of the story, is sitting in Hong Kong. He's a junior financial officer, and he gets an email, right, from the CFO. And we all know how this goes, right? But not what you think. It's not send a wire. It's join me on a Zoom call. And he does. He jumps onto the call. And just like you and I are talking here, he sees the CFO. And two other people he recognizes from finance in the UK, but two other people he doesn't. And the CFO just looks around and says, well, everybody please introduce themselves. He introduces himself. Then the two people he recognizes, he's never met these people ever, but this is his boss's boss's boss, asking him to join a Zoom call. I mean, he straightens his tie. And then the two people that he doesn't recognize introduce themselves as these new partners. These important partners for this new deal that is ultra secret and it needs to close soon. And then the CFO terminates the call. Now the email comes. And it says, thanks for joining the call. Here are your instructions. We need this wire sent immediately. Email me back when it's done. And he does. Over 2 weeks, he sends 15 wires for $25 million. Before finally he calls over to the UK and says, do you really want me to send all these wires? And they never heard of him or the wires.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, criminals are evolving as well. As the more we evolve, is see what I meant when we started in the beginning? This is not a technological problem. A lot of it is a human problem. You can't solve it all with technology. You can't solve it all by installing something. You have to be smart and protect yourself. The government's not going to do it. The cybersecurity companies can't 100% do it, but you can do it if you think the way that these attackers think. You get in their heads and you recognize the attack when it's coming.
I think that's a great point to end the pod. I could just keep talking about this. You're so interesting because you have so much experience and such a unique kind of experience. And this has just been a fantastic call. And I love kind of how you think about all these things. And I love how you explain it all. It's very easy to understand. It's also very confronting, I would say, for lots of people. I'm kind of used to it because of the crypto space. Like that's just all of scammers. That's like the wild, wild, wild west.
I've just stayed away from it. I dipped my toe. I realized I'm not good at cryptocurrency investing. There were like these sure things and I invested like 10 grand and like I've got $900 left.
Yeah. And that's what happened.
That's enough. Right.
And look, but even outside of like if something goes up or down, the whole thing is full of scams anyway, right? So I'm kind of accustomed to that, but I think there's a lot of people who are not. And I think most people, they don't really understand the scope of how sophisticated these hackers are. So I really am happy in terms of all the stories and all the information that's been shared today. I think it's been super helpful. So how do people subscribe to you and how do people get the new book as soon as it is released? Because obviously this is something that everyone should read.
Yeah, the best place to learn all about me is www.ericoneil.net. ERICONEILL. I don't use the apostrophe when it's a computer related thing. .net, and you can learn all about me. It's a brand new webpage. It has all my resources. You can connect with me from there on LinkedIn, on X, and I'm pretty good, especially on LinkedIn, at answering questions and responding to direct messages. Obviously, anybody wants to hire me as a speaker, I'm your man, and I can do all this on stage for you and your crowd, and you can grab me right from there. And once my new book, The Invisible Threat, is ready for pre-order, we'll have it all over the world, but it'll be on there and you can order it directly through that website. So for all things Eric, go right there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'll have the link in the show notes, and I'll also have a link to the LinkedIn profile and to the Amazon page for Grey Day.
Yeah, great.
Yes, everyone should. It's just a cool story. And there's a lot of good insights into kind of how to think about protecting yourself? Like, even though that was
Exactly.
quite a while ago, it's
very
still
relevant. So when
Yeah.
you write a book about cybersecurity, you have to pick stories that are going to be evergreen. It always has to be relevant.
which is hard in cybersecurity because it's
It is.
cyber.
You got to pick big stories that really matter and are going to stick in people's mind. And with the invisible threat, I was very mindful about what I was going to choose to write about. CrowdStrike just made it in at the end. It was kind of hard to explain. Like, I'm saying patch everything, and then I said, except this happened, but don't let that, not let you patch things.
I think
But-
that's
but,
important as well, right? Like, it's like you'd rather be on the side of security and have
Yes.
like the small percentage that doesn't work than on the other side where there's a much higher percentage that someone's going to be hacked.
Yeah, but I go into global attacks. I have an entire chapter about my fears about critical infrastructure attacks. I dive deep into the actual war happening in Ukraine, which started with cyber and is still cyber.
Wow.
And constantly, and how so much cyber warfare is being perfected there on both sides. It's
The Russians versus the Ukrainians. Is that what it is? Because like they're both good hackers, or is it kind of like the Americans versus?
They're all
Russians?
becoming amazing because they're
how-
just testing stuff you would never test unless you're in a war theater.
Wow.
Horrible, nasty things, and just the robots that are being developed too. There are companies that are in Ukraine that are developing robotic systems that are completely manned by AI, and they just point in the direction that the bad guys, the Russians, the opposite side is coming, and shoot. There's some discrimination, but you sure wouldn't want like
Get
some
out of
little
the
kid
way.
running across, right?
Yeah, get out of the-
And both sides are doing it. So there's an envelope of warfare innovation happening there, and AI is a big part of it.
Sorry, one last point. I just want to just quickly ask you this one. Should you pay ransomware if you get attacked by it?
So in general, no. Paying ransomware does two things. It encourages attackers to continue to attack. And every time someone pays a ransom, it's like a devil gets its wings, right? Every time a ransom is paid, it encourages more cyber attackers and more people to join the ranks of the cyber criminals. There's another problem with paying a ransom. You don't know if you're actually going to get a decryption key. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And even if you do get a decryption key and you can get your data back, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a repeat customer. All the problems you had still exist. So you still have to do all of the work in remediation and damage control and doing all of the stuff you should have done in cybersecurity. I always say, don't wait for a pressure situation like a ransomware attack to decide to examine your cybersecurity. Do it when you're chill. But you're still going to have to do all that work, and it's going to cost a multiple more money in the ransomware attack than just doing it now when things are cool. Your cybersecurity advisor who you hire is going to charge a lot less than when you're in the middle of a catastrophic attack.
Would you put everything in the cloud then, and just kind of let somebody like kind of the Googles or the Microsofts of the world just kind of handle security?
If you're a small company and you don't have a security operations center and you don't have a knowledgeable CISO and cybersecurity professionals that are working for you, you're safer by going to a cloud environment, because there you have Amazon or Google or whoever you're using. You use the best ones, whose entire job is to make sure they're secure. And they're encrypting things. So even if it's stolen, until like quantum encryption comes online, decryption comes online, nobody can see what they've stolen. But it's going to be way harder to steal your data from them than, your little one-room server that you've set up and had to install an extra air conditioner to keep it running.
I was about to say with the fan running. Yeah, great. Eric, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Everyone, this is such a unique episode in that he's telling you what to do right now to protect yourself. Subscribe, purchase the book, and just go to his website and subscribe to his email database, and so that you get kind of all the updates as they come out. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the podcast. This has been such a great conversation.
Alex, it was wonderful. I love talking to you, and hopefully we'll do it again.
For sure. Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast. And if you need help driving growth for your company, please get in touch with us at webprofits.io.